the most famous buildings here was where emperors of the Ming and Qing dynasties would pray for good harvests and national peace. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun said that head of state diplomacy plays an important strategic role in guiding China-U.S. relations. China is ready to work with the U.S. in a spirit of equality, respect, and mutual benefit to expand cooperation, manage differences, and bring more stability and certainty to a world facing many uncertainties.
Now, on the one hand, Americans are expressing hope that Trump's visit to China will promote bilateral cooperation, while on the other, Chinese residents are unsure of his visit, as Beijing has tightened security. Listen to what's been said.
Their EV adoption has been really incredible, and I really would love to see tariffs lifted on the EVs that they make there, because their range is a lot better, and that's something that I know. I feel like there's a lot of animosity between the two countries that doesn't need to be there. I think that we have a lot that we can learn from China and their technological advancements.
I think it's a beautiful country. I think there's a lot of opportunity for trade between the U.S. and China. And I think, probably good opportunity to expand together and not be divisive.
Trustworthy. He's like, what, 80 years old now? He's quite old. He sure loves to stir things up. He's always getting into conflicts with other countries and stuff. Honestly, I have a really bad impression of him.
I think his visit to China is definitely about reaching some kind of consensus. And honestly, the U.S. economy has been going downhill. It's been declining. So
This is live in Beijing International Airport, and what you see there is Air Force One, indicating that the president, or POTUS, has arrived in Beijing to begin his two-day bilateral talks with the president of China, President Xi Jinping. There is a lot that has been planned for the president of the United States, including a whole list of itinerary for the president. He will hold talks with President Xi Jinping, and among the topics that he's going to discuss will be, of course, the situation in West Asia, and also the situation concerning Taiwan. So as you can see there, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has arrived in China. This is at the Beijing International Airport. Trump is set to hold talks with his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping. And this is a much awaited visit from the US president. Remember, he last visited China more than 10 years ago. That is actually 9 years ago. And now he's back in China to foster the relationship between two biggest economies in the world, that is the United States and also China. And China has been waiting for this visit for a long time, so they want to discuss what is really happening in the Iranian conflict and also the Strait of Hormuz, because the blockade at the Strait of Hormuz has affected the shipping of crucial oil to China. And the president has been insisting that the reason why he wants the Strait of Hormuz to be opened is for the benefit of countries like China. So he's doing this for the benefit of the world and not for the benefit of the United States. He says that China needs to be involved in what is happening in West Asia and what is really happening in the Strait of Hormuz, because at the end of the day, their ships, their merchant vessels are stuck in the sea or on sea, and they cannot move their much needed crucial crude oil. Let's talk to our correspondent Susan Teherani. She's on phone, she's in New York. Susan Teherani, Good to hear you. The president has arrived in Beijing. We are waiting for moments now. He will disembark from the plane. Over to you.
That's right. President Trump arriving in Beijing, Eric, as you mentioned, almost 10 years after his last visit in 2017. And he's going to find China that's very different on many fronts. On the one hand, China has been able to bypass a lot of the restrictions that the U.S. has put on it. Not all, but many of them. Sanctions as well. And then on the other hand, it has the world's largest Navy fleet, and in some ways have surpassed or is equal in technologies like batteries and robotics. Now, on the other hand, the president believes that he's going in there with the upper hand. You know, you have the dollar, the strongest currency, and then you also have, of course, technologies like semiconductors, which China is very eager to get a part of. And also, the military still stands very powerful. But I think the aspect of Iran and discussions regarding Iran, while the president doesn't want to focus on that, will definitely dominate these talks along with trade as well. So there is a lot of optics that we're going to be looking at, you know, a lot of nice, fuzzy moments between the two. But it's hard to imagine that Xi Jinping also feels like President Trump is, you know, his friend, as the president has often said. After all, these two men really have two very differing views and ideologies on how the world should be run as they sort of fight each other for the role of superpower.
It's because what the American president says, he insists that he's going to only focus on trade, technology, and what is happening in Taiwan. He actually, in fact, said that he will not bring up Taiwan. He will let the president of China bring that topic up. And there's a lot at stake for Taiwan during this two-day visit by the president. Taiwan wants the United States president to discuss their arms sale to Taiwan. I don't know, Susan, if at all the president or the White House has said anything concerning what is happening in Taiwan.
Yeah, the president said that he's sure that Xi Jinping will bring up the issue of Taiwan, and he said he'll discuss it. You know, Taiwan is not only regarding Taiwan's autonomy and its democracy and its desire to stay away from China, but, you know, Taiwan is the world's biggest chip maker as well. So in the trade and economic aspect of it, it's very appealing for the United States. I highly doubt that Taiwan is on top of President Trump's mind, and I think this administration will continue with the strategic ambiguity that previous administrations have continued regarding Taiwan. But nonetheless, it will be no surprise that Xi Jinping is going to bring that up. I would be interested to see whether or not anything regarding Taiwan, at least behind closed doors, happens where the president can get some incentive regarding Iran from China and, you know, give something back regarding Taiwan. And I think Taiwan is very worried about that. But, you know, you never know behind closed doors whether or not some kind of deal, whether it's very gray or whether it's, you know, not all out China invading Taiwan, but something regarding trade would happen where both sides would be satisfied and Taiwan can play as a bargaining chip. Again, it's very concerning for Taiwan.
Talking about what is happening behind closed doors, there was a controversy on the list of the business people who are set to accompany the president to China. He actually posted on social media, onto social, indicating that there's a list of individuals or business people, including Elon Musk and also Tim Cook. He had an issue with one particular person. Maybe, Susan, you can give us more information about that.
That's right, Eric, a lengthy interview there, but whether or not America needs China for ending the Iran war continues to be the big question. In fact, you know, as Donald Trump makes this visit after 9 long years, a lot of experts and observers across the world believe that Donald Trump needs China and Xi Jinping more than China needs America at the moment. And it is, one of the reasons, and the biggest one of that, is to get Chinese help to end the Iran war. All of these weeks since this Iran conflict began and through all of the violent escalations that we all have witnessed in this conflict, back-channel talks have taken place between China and Iran. In fact, America has urged Chinese authorities, specifically Xi Jinping, to intervene and persuade Iran to end the war. So far, that hasn't really reap that kind of an impact and benefit that perhaps Donald Trump would have wanted. Because remember, once Iran stops the war and decides to stop the war on the persuasion of the Chinese, America and Donald Trump can then go on and claim victory once again in this conflict, hopefully the final victory that we will hear about from Donald Trump. But this is one of the biggest reasons why Donald Trump's crucial China visit is going to be having an impact on the Iran conflict. So while the U.S. president does say that, we don't need China, beg your pardon, to help end the Iran war, there have been back-channel talks that have been going on, and America does need Iran and China to come together and talk about ending this war, because so far American side hasn't been able to do so as far as the peace negotiations are concerned. Last time around, the peace talks were held in Islamabad. They failed to get to a logical conclusion. There is and still remains a massive, deep mistrust between the two sides, between the American side and the Iranian side, and therefore a third party is needed. And China's role is crucial here because it's a close ally of Iran. Yes.
Shreya, sorry to stop you there, but the president has disembarked from Air Force One. He is greeting some of the officials who are at the airport to welcome him. We do not know who the officials really are. I cannot see clearly who the officials really are, but the president has disembarked from Air Force One. He's headed to the Beast, where he will just spend a night in Beijing and then start his bilaterals tomorrow. Let's just listen in to what is happening at the Beijing International Airport for a while. Right, so there you have it. President Donald Trump and his son. I see his son there. I see his daughter-in-law. Some of the officials who are accompanying the president to China have not disembarked from the plane. We are still to get who really welcomed President Trump at the airport, at the Beijing International Airport. And Trump is going to spend the night in Beijing and then start his bilateral talks with the president of China, Xi Jinping. And this is a much-awaited trip by the world because they see these formidable foes coming together after 10 years. And now President Trump is returning to a more assertive China, so to speak. Shreya, coming back to you and looking at what the world should expect. I've been talking to various critics who say that there's not much that is going to come out of this meeting between President Xi Jinping and President Trump, because President Trump going there after 10 years, China has changed. It's more assertive now.
That's right. Eric, this seems to be a visit by Donald Trump that a lot of experts are downplaying as not something substantial in terms of results. But look at the optics. You've got Donald Trump, deboarding from Air Force One. You had Ivanka and Barron Trump along with him, and with them was Elon Musk. Our viewers must have seen those visuals where Elon Musk was accompanying Donald Trump. There is, of course, a list of business CEOs, tech giant CEOs who are accompanying him on this trip, clearly reflecting the kind of business dealings and business negotiations that are expected to happen in this visit. But it is important also to notice how Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, did not come to the airport to receive him. That, of course, sending out one message. He will meet him later during this visit. But Donald Trump being welcomed, accorded that state welcome. And now, of course, he is expected to leave the airport. But in terms of optics, in terms of perception building, this visit is extremely crucial, specifically for Donald Trump. Because remember, since he assumed the second time, the presidency for the second time, there have been conflicts that have erupted between traditional American allies. Many of the American allies, specifically the European countries, aren't very happy with the way Donald Trump has been conducting diplomacy with them. And therefore, this serves as an opportunity for him to show to the world that, look, we are a rival country, we are in a rival country, we are in China, we have our differences and they are still ongoing, yet I'm here and I am willing to take this forward because, I want to show the world that I am capable of having this strategic diplomacy with a rival country. That is number one. Number two, of course, is the fact that, as we were talking earlier, Iran war continues to be a focal point for the American side. There's another crucial segment that is going to be at the center, considering the fact that there is a plethora of tech giant CEOs who are accompanying Donald Trump on this visit, the artificial intelligence race. And that holds the key to this visit. The AI race is very interesting, Eric, because on the one hand, you've got US and China against each other in this race. But interestingly, as far as the manufacturing of components is concerned, the raw material is concerned, both countries are intertwined with each other. So one can't do without the other. While America at the moment leads the AI race, remember, China has these massive data ecosystems, huge manufacturing capacity. So America needs China as much as China needs America in this AI race. So it's going to be hugely interesting how the two countries pave their way forward in this particular sector, because this is a competition, this is a battle that both countries want to dominate, because we know that, the next future wars will be fought on AI, and it's already penetrated our daily lives. The next country that dominates the AI race will have power over the world, and both countries are trying to do the same, and that is why this visit is extremely crucial for Donald Trump.
Well, talking about powers and superpowers, let me just bring our viewers up to speed with what is really happening between the United States and China, because this summit between the world's two most powerful leaders is said to be one of the most consequential encounters for years, with a number of key issues at stake. We've been talking about those issues here. China is trying to quietly play peacemaker in the Iranian war, now in its third month, but may want something in return for stepping in to help the United States. Trump says he would have a long talk about Iran with President Xi. When it comes to Taiwan, the Trump administration has been sending mixed signals, approving a massive arms deal while downplaying its willingness to defend the island from Chinese aggression. We heard from the State Secretary, Marco Rubio, who said they would discuss Taiwan on the trip. though the goal will be to ensure it does not become a source of new tensions. When it comes to trade, the Trump administration will push to increase Chinese purchase of U.S. agricultural products, while China is sure to pressure the United States to drop its probe into unfair business practices, which could allow Trump to reimpose higher tariffs on Chinese goods. And when it comes to AI, like Shreya was talking about, Xi hopes China's investment in AI will help propel its economy forward. But many in the United States are wary of Chinese firms stealing their technology, leading to U.S. restrictions on exporting the latest microprocessors. This is where Beijing could use its leverage over rare earths. And there may be a deal to be done between President Xi and President Trump. Let's go to our correspondent, Susan Teherani. Susan, maybe you can give us the full itinerary of the president, apart from the talks with President Xi Jinping.
I'll get to the itinerary in a second, but I just want to let you know that as we're looking at these visuals of President Trump disembarking from Air Force One, he was greeted by China's Vice President Han Zheng, and also attending, according to the White House, of course, next to him was the U.S. Ambassador David Perdue, the Chinese Ambassador Xi Feng, China's Foreign Minister Ma Jianzhu, and of course those 300 Chinese youth and a military band and honor guard. So those were the individuals that were with the president arriving in China. Of course, they rolled out the red carpet for the base of the stairs, and just for our viewers, the president disembarked at around 8:08 p.m. local time. I want to give you some of the itinerary that you were referring to. Of course, he will meet with China's President Xi Jinping, and they will have a number of public and private discussions. He will be greeted first by Xi Jinping. Then he's going to participate in a bilateral meeting with Xi Jinping, and then in a state banquet with Xi Jinping. This will all happen in one day, and then on Friday, he is expected to participate in a greeting and friendship photo with Xi Jinping, bilateral tea with Xi as well. Of course, the delegation is going to be there, and then a bilateral lunch with Xi. After that, on Friday, he is going to depart Beijing, China, en route to the White House. Now, so this is according to the White House's itinerary. There are a number of other engagements that the president may have, walking around different places with Xi that the White House hasn't released yet. But I think we're going to see a lot of these two men standing side by side, and the optics are going to be very interesting. Again, a portrayal of coordination, economic cooperation, diplomacy, but behind the diplomacy and behind these optics is, I think, where
the list of business people or business individuals who are accompanying President Trump, there was controversy there because Trump did critique one of the news agencies in America who said that there's one particular person who was not on the list, but Trump said that that person is on the list.
Right, the head of NVIDIA.
Yes.
I think that the head of NVIDIA, there was some online controversy about whether or not he would be on this list. And I think it's important to note that on the one hand, it is a list of individuals that will be traveling independently to China as part of this delegation. But then you have Elon Musk and the head of NVIDIA who are actually on Air Force One with President Trump. And I think that's where the controversy arose, that it's not only that he's not coming, he joined in Alaska and also got on Air Force One with Elon Musk.
Well, that's interesting because we are waiting for who emerges from Air Force One right now. In a few minutes from now, Susan, stay with me because the president is just about to disembark from the Air Force One. This is live in Beijing International Airport. The president has arrived in China for his much-awaited two-day state visit where he's expected to meet the president of China, Xi Jinping. They are set to hold bilateral talks with the president, and what will be in focus is trade, technology, the Iranian war, and also Taiwan. And the president did indicate before he left for Beijing that he will not bring up the issue of Taiwan. He will let that be on Xi Jinping's side of the coin. And the president did indicate that all he wants to do is bridge the gap when it comes to trade and technology with China, because he says that America still has some speed when it comes to technology, and he wants to get to know from the Chinese side how they do it, and if they can collaborate on that sector, or if they can collaborate on sectors such as trade. Susan, I hope you are with me. Who are some of the envoys who are escorting the president to Beijing, and what's the significance of them being there?
So you have the trade leaders that you mentioned, and then you also have people like Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio. Scott Bessent earlier spoke with trade officials in China. He arrived there prior to President Trump. And I think what's very interesting is Marco Rubio is on this trip. He is now, of course, the Secretary of State. But a few years ago, when he was senator, China sanctioned him and put restrictions on his travel to China because of comments that he made regarding Xinjiang, labor laws, human rights violations, and the treatment of Uyghurs in China. So, it's interesting that as Secretary of State now, Marco Rubio goes to China. Despite that past relationship, he's completely a China hawk. But I think both sides, of course the United States, but China as well, decided that it's better to really not allude to those restrictions, those travel restrictions and sanctions, where he was senator, and keep the lines of communication open. Because at the end of the day, these are two countries, despite their huge differences, and despite the fact that China has relations with a lot of America's adversaries, they believe that the lines of communication should be open, and they believe that they are highly dependent on each other.
How do you think the tariffs talk is going to unfold in China, Susan?
So, I think for the Chinese, it's very important to bring down the temperature when it comes to the tariffs. And I think President Trump, that's where he sort of can hold some kind of sway on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's something that the United States can agree to when it comes to tariffs. But I think that they will ultimately be in the same conversation as the trade imbalance with the United States. China has a trade surplus. There needs to be a rebalancing of the economy. And the import competition that is happening right now, where American markets are flooding with Chinese goods, but on the other hand, that doesn't happen the other way around. I think that's also going to really play heavily on the tariff issues. Also, American farmers are going to be watching very closely. America wants China to buy more soybeans and just generally purchase more American goods. And I think that, that may be sort of something that the two sides can ultimately come out with some kind of deliverable. But what's interesting is the tariff issue might actually be the least complicated issues between the two sides, considering the fact that, you have the issue of fentanyl. President Trump just recently talked about how COVID came from China, and China never acknowledged that. There's the human rights violations issue, where a lot of analysts believe that this administration might not really harp heavily on, but again, it might become a topic of conversation, once again interrelated to the rebalancing of the economy and the import competition and the job losses that Americans have been facing here due to China. And then there's the stealing of intellectual property and the issue of AI. And I think that's the reason that President Trump wants to focus so much on trade, because he sees that there may be areas of cooperation in those issues, despite the fact that China has made promises regarding these things before. but I think he believes that he can get some kind of deliverable coming back regarding those issues. But then, of course, the issue of the Iran war, the Strait of Hormuz, shipping lanes, oil, those are going to be a lot more complicated.
Susan Tehrani is our correspondent. She is in New York. Susan, I will come back to you so that you can give us the itinerary, the full itinerary of the President of the United States in China. Shreya Upadhyay is our correspondent. She is my colleague. She is in the newsroom. Shreya, before I come to you, the President of the United States had given a lengthy interview to reporters yesterday. He did indicate that he doesn't think that they need any help when it comes to Iran. He also said that he will discuss the issue of Iran with the Chinese counterpart or the Chinese president, but is not really sure how China is going to assist. From perfectly timed red carpet arrivals to private imperial tours reserved for only the most privileged guests, China is once again preparing a welcome that is as much about diplomacy as it is about displaying power. President Trump has landed in Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to stage a highly choreographed show of statecraft, one where every detail is planned down to the second. The visit is set to include stops at the Temple of Heaven, the historic site where Chinese emperors once prayed for legitimacy and good harvests, as well as the Zhong Nanhai, the secretive heart of China's communist leadership. Former diplomats say China's approach to state visits is unmatched in its precision. Every movement, every photo op, every ceremonial note is
The visuals on your screen right now, first official visit of Trump in his second term to China, and Donald Trump is being welcomed at an official arrival ceremony alongside Xi Jinping at the Great Hall of the People. This marks Trump's first engagement, as I previously mentioned, during his two-day visit to China. Located west of Tiananmen Square, the Great Hall of the People is a key state building used for legislative activities and for hosting foreign dignitaries. The two leaders are expected to hold high-level talks at the venue later in the day, followed by a state banquet.
As you can see on your screens, these were the latest visuals that we're getting from Beijing, where Donald Trump is being welcomed at an official arrival ceremony alongside Xi Jinping at the Great Hall of the People. And this marks Trump's first engagement during his two-day visit to China. Great Hall of the People is a key state building which is used for legislative activities and hosting foreign dignitaries. After this, the two leaders are expected to hold high-level talks at the venue later in the day, followed by a state banquet. Well, we can see that Donald Trump is accompanied by his delegation, which, along with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, we also see several CEOs and tech startups. We have Elon Musk, and another important presence is, of course, of NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang. Well, the context surrounding this summit definitely feels far heavier than Trump's last visit to Beijing. Now, from the war in West Asia to tensions in the Taiwan Strait and the race for dominance, all eyes are on this high-stakes, high-risk meeting between President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, which is taking place in Beijing. Now, this was, of course, the arrival ceremony alongside Xi Jinping at the Great Hall of the People. And this marks Trump's first engagement during his two-day visit to China.
Right. Trump is also pushing for as we've discussed before, Trump is pushing for China to open up its markets to American businesses, boost investment and job creation in the U.S., and even increase purchases of U.S. farm products like beef and soybeans. And meanwhile, if we look from the Chinese perspective, Xi is expected to press for relief on issues such as tariffs and Taiwan.
And of course, China has rolled out the full ceremonial playbook for Donald Trump. And to discuss more, we're now being joined by our correspondent, Susan Teherani, who is joining us live from New York. Susan, now, this is classic Chinese statecraft, warmth and pageantry in public, even as very difficult conversations await behind closed doors. What can we expect from today's summit? What's the mood like on the ground in Washington? Tell us more.
So really, we're just seeing full pageantry really happening in Beijing as we speak together here from India and the United States. The world is really watching this summit very closely. Of course, very high stakes for both countries, but also for the world as well. It happens with the fog of war over this summit between Xi Jinping and President Trump. With Iran, with the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, a lot at stake for China regarding that blockade. Not only does its export economy rely on the Strait of Hormuz, but also, getting almost 90% of Iranian oil into the country is very noteworthy as well. So, it's not only oil, it's a lot of other aspects in the Strait of Hormuz that President Trump hopes to talk to Xi Jinping about, and possibly for China to play a more effective mediating role in opening the Strait of Hormuz. Now, President Trump says that he's not going to seek any help when it comes to the war in Iran, but it's very important that they do talk about, the waterways, the international waterway, and shipping, the freedom of navigation as well. So that's going to be, of course, on top of the agenda. The issue of Taiwan for China is going to be very important. Taiwan is watching this meeting very closely because it's concerned that ultimately whether or not President Trump is going to give away anything regarding Taiwan in exchange for something happening with the Strait of Hormuz and Iran as well. But President Trump, when he was leaving Washington and going into this meeting, he said trade is on his mind. It is the most important aspect for him. And that really, seeing the tech CEOs joining him on this trip is a testament to how important that is for him. Right now, China has a surplus of import into the United States, flooding American markets. American car makers are suffering. There's been job losses. There really isn't that much of a competition. It's just one way. President Trump hopes that with bringing these tech CEOs, that's going to change and it's going to be a different environment, and perhaps China can open its domestic markets to more American firms. Our colleagues who are on the ground over there say that they see many McDonald's and Starbucks and Apple, of course, these big American companies. But for the average American investor, they still don't trust that they can really do business in China, and that's very important. Ultimately, President Trump wants China to buy more American goods, including agriculture, energy, and possibly we'll hear some announcements regarding Boeing aircrafts. China, on the other hand, wants relief from U.S. restrictions on semiconductors. But China holds the cards when it comes to certain rare earth minerals. That's going to be discussed, of course, between the two sides as well. But I think it's very important that prior to this meeting, Scott Bessent went to China and sort of laid the groundworks for these trade talks between the two sides. So if there's going to be any quote unquote deliverables, it might be regarding trade, and then behind closed doors regarding Taiwan and the Strait of Hormuz.
Susan, you did mention trade, which is one of the most significant agendas that both the countries are looking to cover. And we know this comes after imposing what many analysts described as a de facto trade embargo on China in early 2025. Donald Trump now arrives in Beijing, speaking of cooperation, investment, and a possible G2 dynamic with Xi Jinping. What do you think explains this diplomatic pivot?
Well, I think just the environment that really we've seen change. This is, as you mentioned, it's not the same China that President Trump visited back in 2017 with the rise of AI and with China really playing such a vital role, not only in a lot of aspects like rare earth minerals, but also it has the world's largest Navy fleet. It's ahead of the United States when it comes to robotics and batteries. Its economy is suffering, but I think just to answer your question, this might be an interesting nugget here. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, right before President Trump left for Beijing, put a new assessment on China's industrial strategy. It argues that the quote-unquote window for effective policy response to China's state-led economic model is narrowing. So this timing is very important just to show where the United States and China stand right now and how the United States views China. This is from the U.S.'s largest business lobbying group. This is a pointed reminder really to President Trump and the world that the case for managed separation has now only grown stronger. So on the one hand, they do want to have a managed separation, but on the other hand, it seems that the fate of these two countries are intertwined one way or the other.
Right, of course, Susan, it would be interesting to, track how things develop from here on. But for now, thank you so much for getting us those details. That was our correspondent, Susan Teherani, joining us from New York.
Sorry, sir, you cannot film now. You cannot film now after the two presidents come to Pakistan.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Right, and the visuals that you see on your screen are the latest we're getting from Beijing, from the Great Hall of the People, where we can see Secretary of State Marco Rubio along with Pete Hegseth. And this, of course, follow the pageantry that we just saw. And we understand that optics here are significant because China understands perhaps better than anyone that Donald Trump places enormous value on symbolism, grandeur, and also a certain degree of personal rapport. And this was classic Chinese statecraft, warmth and pageantry in public. And even as very difficult conversations are now about to begin, where the focus would, of course, be on Taiwan, the condition in West Asia, and, of course, trade and AI will also feature prominently, Kripa.
Yes, indeed. Donald Trump now, what we saw before was a grand and carefully choreographed welcome ceremony. He arrived to that. It was also accompanied with 21-gun salute for the U.S. president from Chinese President Xi Jinping, setting the stage for what could be one of the most important meetings between the two leaders in years. We know that weeks ago, Trump even joked that he expected Xi to greet him with a big fat hug when he landed in China, while the greeting at the Great Hall of the People was more formal, as we can see, than it was personal. The scale of the welcome, it did make it clear that Beijing wanted to roll out the red carpet.
Absolutely, Kripa. And now what comes after the ceremony is where the substance actually begins. The bilateral talks expected to focus on trade tensions, technology restrictions. Taiwan is also likely to feature prominently in it. And of course, AI competition and the broader question of whether Washington and Beijing can prevent rivalry from tripping into confrontation. Of course, that would be something that all eyes would be glued to. And the atmospherics, they look cordial, but beneath the slides, of course, there is deep tension as to how the, bilateral is going to pan out, with analysts watching very carefully whether this warmth in optics translates into real warmth in tone once the talks begin as well.
As you rightly mentioned, Diksha, the atmosphere reflected the high stakes of the summit. Trump has indeed brought several powerful American business leaders along with him, alongside the government officials. He hopes to secure better access for U.S. companies to China's huge consumer market and even attract more Chinese investment into the United States. Now, China, meanwhile, is focused on stabilizing relations with Washington, especially on tariffs. Beijing knows that Trump is unlikely to completely remove trade duties, but it does want to avoid the unpredictable tariff swings that have strained relations between the two countries in recent years.
中美两国能不能跨越 所谓的修昔底德陷阱，开创大国关系的新范式。能不能携手应对全球挑战，为世界注入更多的稳定性？能不能着眼两国人民的福祉和人类前途命运，共同开创两国关系的美好未来？这些可以说是历史之问、世界之问、人民之问，也是我同您作为大国领导人需要共同书写的时代答卷。今年是美国独立250周年，我向你和美国人民表示祝贺。我始终认为，中美之间的共同利益大于分歧，中美各自成功是彼此的机遇，中美关系稳定是世界的利好。双方合则两利，斗则俱伤，应当做伙伴而不是对手，相互成就，共同繁荣，走出一条新时代大国正确相处之道。我期待着同总统先生就事关两国和世界的重大问题交换意见，共同为中美关系这艘大船领好航、掌好舵，让2026年成为中美关系继往开来的历史性、标志性年份。我就先说这么多，请总统先生讲。